everyone, welcome to the June webinar. I hope that for most of you exams are now done, or at least that they're well on their way to completion. We'll just give everyone else a couple more minutes to join us, and in the meantime there's some very dramatic classical music playing. If you think you know an artist, feel free to write it in the chat. Abigail, everyone, welcome to the June webinar. I hope that for most of you exams... Yeah, music student, spot on.
So another minute or so and we can get started. We've got a lot to get through today. There's more coming in, which is great. Great, okay. Well, thank you. Let's get started then. Okay. Right, so hello everyone. My name is Joyce. I am the co-founder of Insight Outreach and the founder of the Oxbridge Mentoring Scheme. So I hope you are well. I know that it's been a rather stressful time, not only through the disruptions caused by COVID, but also because it's exam season. I hope they've all gone well. I am really delighted to introduce a brand new volunteer, but she comes with fantastic experience of Cambridge admissions, Claire Brine. So Claire, why don't you say a few words?
Hello everyone, fantastic to be with you this evening. Yeah, I'm going to join Joyce today in this personal statement webinar. I studied history and management studies at Cambridge University at Peterhouse, graduated about 8 years ago, and since then I've worked as a secondary school history teacher for several years, and then actually moved back to the university to work in the admissions office of Girton College, the University of Cambridge, and then I've worked for the Central University until a couple of months ago. So really great to be here with you today, giving you some of my advice.
Thank you, Claire. We're delighted to have you, and you come with so much useful background experience and information as well. So a little bit of housekeeping, I think, to start off with. So I know that all of you have got your videos turned off. That's absolutely fine. This is being recorded. If you did want to start your video, that's your choice, and it would be lovely to see your faces, but as I say, it's absolutely fine just like this. It is meant to be an interactive session, so be prepared for when we call out your name to unmute yourself and get the best out of this session by interacting and contributing. So with UCAS personal statements, it'd be actually quite good to know, give a show of hands, thumbs up or whatever, to let me know and let Claire know whether you've made a start. I'll give you 15 or 30 seconds to let us know that. Yeah. It's been exam season. Okay, right, so not too many of you, but there's been some. Okay, so maybe if you're sitting here today thinking, oh my God, I just don't know where to start drafting, how to start drafting my UCAS personal statement. Well, this session is going to be the answer to probably all your fears. So without further ado, let's get started then and progress through what we have the tips and advice that we have to tell you. Okay, over to you, Claire.
Yeah, so why do we even need this thing called a personal statement? You may know this, but if not, I'll introduce you to it. So your personal statement is your chance to help your chosen universities get to know you and why you are super fit for your chosen course at their university. And remember, most universities don't actually conduct interviews. So it's in those cases, it's their only chance to get to know you. It's also your chance to differentiate yourself from all the other applicants, to really stand out. And for that reason, we like you to think about it as being a bit like an interview on paper. And so in the same way you would in a face-to-face interview, you want your voice, your personality, your passion to be really evident to the admissions office or tutor who's going to be reading it. Okay, and for Oxbridge, the personal statements can actually be used as a sort of trigger for questions in your interview. I know in my situation, most of the questions from my first interview were actually stemmed from things I'd written in my personal statement. So it's really important for that reason too. If you can move me on to the next slide, Joyce, we'll talk a little bit about style and appearance of this personal statement. So just really briefly, there's a set length, okay? It has to be 4,000 characters and also 47 lines maximum. So not words, but characters. Every letter, space, punctuation mark counts as a character, okay? And the UCAS website just simply won't let you submit it if it's over those limits. And we actually recommend that you write it on Microsoft Word or whatever text processor you would normally use, and cut and paste it onto UCAS when you're ready. This is for several reasons. You can use the spell checker and the word count and character count on those on Microsoft Word. And also it's much, much easier for sending it to your teachers and for redrafting and getting feedback on your personal statement, because you will be redrafting this. You're not going to write it once and then submit. There's going to be several sort of iterations. Okay. It's really important to note, guys, that it does go through plagiarism software automatically. So it must be your own words, your own voice, written in a way that you would actually explain yourself. And it cannot be too like anyone else's, and that will be detected. And in terms of deadlines, for anyone making an application to Oxford or Cambridge, and for most medicine, vet med, dentistry courses, the deadline is actually 15th of October, which is a little bit earlier, a few months earlier than if you're not applying to those universities or those courses. But your school is likely to have an earlier deadline. And so this is the UCAS deadline. You need to know what your school's deadline is as well, because they need to attach your teacher reference, etc. Now, everyone listening to this, I want you to commit to yourself that you are not going to leave it to the last minute, to the 14th, 15th of October to submit. Okay, UCAS could crash in the last rush to get these personal statements up, and it's a really important piece of writing that's going to influence your future. And I don't want you panicking to finish it at the last minute and realizing that you've got the character count wrong and that you need to edit it. Okay, so you commit to yourself to getting it in ahead of your school's deadline, you know, and not leaving it to the 14th, 15th of October. Now, it is a formal application, which means you have to have a formal tone. So no slang, no abbreviations. I want to see do not rather than don't. A formal piece of writing. And I've got to say something about quotations. People are quite tempted to use cheesy quotations that are only a little bit relating to what they're saying. We recommend you leave them out. They're a waste of words. Anyone can find a quotation on the internet. But no, not everyone can live your life and have your experiences. So please don't waste your words on something that can just be found on the internet. Okay, does need to be fully accurate in terms of your spelling, your punctuation, and your grammar. We're going to show you some examples today. Most of them are very accurate, but I want you to see if you can spot any mistakes that might have slipped through. and it needs to be structured carefully into paragraphs. And that's what much of today is going to be about. We've got a really clear 6-paragraph structure that Joyce is going to give you an overview of, and we recommend you stick to it because we know it works.
Thank you, Claire. Some really useful advice there. And just to re-emphasize, it's called a personal statement for a reason. It is your personal story. So don't end up writing what you think, you know, admissions tutors want to hear. You have to tell your personal story, and we'll show you how to do that today. And just a point on practical advice point. It says 47 lines. What they don't tell you is that if you've left spaces between your paragraphs, that's a wasted space. So if you think, oh my God, you know, it is 4,000 characters, you actually have to remove the spaces. And in actual fact, when you submit it, all your lovely formatting into paragraph just flies out of the window. It is a block text. It's one bit, 4,000 characters of block text. Okay, right, let's move on. Oh, what have I done? Let's try here. Share this again. Okay. So what to include and how to include it. So it's really simple. We've broken this down for you in such a simple way, in that if you answer the questions fully, using real and PESC, which all of you should know about, then actually you would have, you know, the bones of a good structure for your personal statement. So paragraph 1 is, why have you chosen to study your course? It's such a simple question, but quite hard to answer. So what event or events in your life triggered your passion for your subject? It could be a single event, or it could be multiple events in your life leading to a realization that medicine, law, you know, economics, physics is what you want to study at university. We're interested to know what those trigger points are. Okay, so I think that there is a tendency for, you know, for I think probably schools and generally just to launch straight in to, you know, trumpeting your achievements in certain areas. We're coming from a slightly different angle, in that we think that actually it's good to show how far your motivation, you know, goes back. And it's not until you keep asking yourself why that you get to the crux of the of what you're trying to say. And it could be that there were things that you were doing as a child that showed up early aptitude for the subject that you want to study at university. So bear that in mind. Paragraph 2, how do your combination of subjects and skills demonstrate that you would make a good student for your subject? I think it's rather easy if you're going on to study a subject at university that is related to, you know, the subject combination that you've chosen for A level. But what about law and medicine? Well, we'll come to that as part of this session. 3, what particular areas of your subject do you find most interesting and why? And this is where your wider reading comes in, your you know, subject related extracurricular, the concepts and theories that you find interesting and that you've gone further to explore in your own time. Now, paragraph 4 and paragraph 5, the way I'd like to think of this is, paragraph 4 is the subject related extracurricular. How do you develop these areas of work beyond, these areas of interest beyond work set in class? So an expectation that you've gone above and beyond, you know, what you study in class into your own time, and that actually you live and breathe your subject in your own time. The paragraph 5 is non-subject extracurricular, so all the kind of softer skills that you would have gained through doing extracurricular activities. Okay, paragraph 6 is really important. So don't do it so that, oh, you know, I just need to find some way of finishing my UCAS statement. In actual fact, it's really important, and really the point of sophistication for us is if you link it back to your triggers of the first paragraph, so it ties up like a neat little bow. Okay, so that's what we're going to be going through today. I know you would have looked at this as part of you know, the OMS, your OMS journey. So here we go. Let's move on. Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, so we're going to dive in a bit deeper into that structure and go through paragraph by paragraph. Okay, and the first 3 or 4 paragraphs really are all about your motivation, why you've chosen that subject, and demonstrating that you are someone who really is motivated by it. And the key word I just used, I think, is demonstrating. Okay, it's very easy to just put in words like commitment, interest, enthusiastic, passionate. Every single one of you could just put those words into your statement right now. But your personal statement is not about stating those things that anyone else could. It's about demonstrating them in your own life and your own experiences. And a really good way of doing that right from the very beginning and making it truly unique to you is to actually try and articulate in paragraph 1 a specific event or events, like Joy said, that triggered your passion or appreciation of that subject. And the more specific, the better. Now, some people worry that they don't have a particular event, but I pretty much guarantee you that there will be some sort of trigger for your interest in this subject. None of us are born interested in history or law or economics or maths. But the circumstances, conversations, experiences in our lives will have contributed to this in some way. So I actually want you to just take a moment and think about yourself and your subject here. I'm going to give you a couple of prompt questions, but think about, what is this trigger for you? You know, what are your earliest memories of that subject and a situation where you showed an interest in it? Conversations with parents or insights into particular jobs or your parents' interests, some event that struck you in the world as powerful, or things you watched or read that might have sparked your curiosity. You know, have you, in science, did you find something, a fossil, well, on a holiday when you were younger, or a skeleton or a fascinating animal? In maths, did you calculate something and found you were actually very good at it? Humanities, did you read or observe something going on in the world that really sparked your interest in that subject, or showed you had a sort of ability to analyze ideas or stories? Okay, I want you to take 30 seconds now to think about that for you. And if anyone's brave enough, I'd love to just hear in the chat what that trigger was for you. So think about it for yourself, and I'd love to know 1 or 2 things from people in the chat as a trigger for your subject interest. I know it's quite personal. That's what makes it, you know, your personal statement. But if anyone is brave enough to share, I'd love to hear it. Or pop your hand up if you're even braver and willing to speak to us today and tell us about why you're interested in your subject. Olivia, fantastic. So Olivia got a microscope when she was younger, which made her really interested in microscopy and biology. Fantastic. Yes. So is there something from your childhood that you remember sparking that interest? That's a great example, Olivia, and I'm sure you'll be able to find ways of articulating that in a really sort of unique way. Any more? I'll tell you mine just while we're waiting. I studied history at university. And for me, it was, I actually started researching my surname. I had quite an unusual maiden name. So I started looking into my family history, actually went to a sort of local archive to look into that family name, and then got really interested in local history and Irish history from that. So we've got a few more coming in. Always loved physics and maths, but in year 10, school offered a day trip for women in engineering. Fantastic. So that really introduced you to engineering, even if you had already liked maths and physics. And then Lily, she said quite randomly, she thinks of a time that she saw someone get arrested and followed their case, presumably in the local newspapers or on the news. They're found not guilty, which really sparked her interest in injustices in the legal system. Fantastic. It absolutely could be any of these things that are really bringing you into your subject. Thank you, guys. You're putting loads of great ideas into the chat now. I'll read a few of them a little bit later. Brilliant. So you've all got something, a trigger. Let's see what some examples of that, Joyce. Could you show us the 2 examples, and we'll take a bit of a look at this. So I'm gonna read out the law one, and then I'm gonna ask someone to pop their hand up to volunteer to read the PPE one, please. Otherwise, I will pick on someone. Okay, so the law candidate says, "Without justice, courage is weak." Quotation. For me, this quotation by Benjamin Franklin defines what a legal system ought to be, a system of rules that provides the boundaries within which society operates. My interest in law was ignited as a result of reading about Dame Butler Sloss's ruling concerning granting anonymity to the 2 young boys proven guilty of killing toddler James Bulger in 1991. I remember being struck by questions of morality whilst admiring the courage of the judge in setting precedents in case law, a judicial decision befitting Franklin's quotation. Okay, that's our law example. I want you to think about, does that follow the rules I've just said? Does it roll off the tongue? Does it really show me why they're interested? And then can I have someone, please, to read out the PPE candidate? Hand up, please, to volunteer. Otherwise, I'm going to pick on someone. Chuzia, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Chuzia, please unmute yourself and read out PPE for me. Thank you.
Hi. Okay, so as the clock strikes 10 p.m, I anxiously await the evening news. This is where the best stories are told, no fiction or fantasy, but politics, conflict, and my native Africa. Stories that cause curiosity, thought, and occasional protestation. These are the stories that led me to be better informed and undoubtedly left me wanting to know, discuss, and become involved in politics.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chuzia. And just while you're still there, don't unmute yourself just yet. I'd love to know, just gut instinct, which of these do you prefer, Chuzia?
I really liked the first one, just how it quoted Benjamin Franklin, but I also like the PPE one because it's more personal. So it depends. I think the first one's more sort of academic and the other one's more kind of personal, which is more nicer.
Yeah, okay, some really good points there, but I'm going to pick up on what you said about the second one being more personal. You can kind of imagine this person sitting on the sofa watching the 10 o'clock news. It's very believable, very personal. And remember, we're looking for personal statement, and we're preferably not looking for Benjamin Franklin quotes. Starting with a quote is quite a weak way to start your personal statement. Start it straight in with the personal and that trigger, okay? But both of them are good examples of a genuine, showing a genuine interest, showing something that set them going. But for me, that second one, that PPE one, really hits the spot. I can absolutely believe that is a reason why someone would get into politics. And it tells me quite a lot, actually, about that interest. Thank you so much, Chizia, for your input and reading there. So yeah, that's paragraph 1, your trigger. What is it for you? And you turn that into a really great first paragraph.
Claire, wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's move on to paragraph 2. Motivation for your subject. So the question is, how do your combination of A-level subjects and skills demonstrate that you would make a good student for your chosen subject? So I want you to, like we did in the first question, I want you to take a few minutes to think. I think the most important things to do here would be to be analytical and reflective. It's not to do with stating your A-level subjects, because they already know that. It's to do with showing what you enjoy about your subject, and also the sorts of skills and awareness of the skills that make you an excellent candidate for your chosen university subject. Does that make sense? Yeah. So here we expect you to talk about relevant transferable skills that you've learned at A-level, and how you've explored these new subjects on your own or through project at school. Okay. Oops, let's just go back one. So I am interested. Let's have a go at this. It's something that kind of flummoxes some students, this particular paragraph. Let's give this a go. So who's not contributed just yet, and who's brave enough? Anyone? I'm just going to pick someone if you don't mind. So Poppy, what would you say? Pick one of your A-level subjects which is relevant to what you're studying at university, and talk to me about the skills that you've learnt which are relevant and which you've enjoyed learning.
Hello, I'm taking RA and I want to take maths and philosophy. So the relevant skills are to do with arguing my point and certainly developing my ability to be able to critically analyse an argument, which I can apply further at university. Great.
And what about so what more could you say about, so you want to study maths and philosophy, is that right?
Yes.
And are you taking maths and philosophy at A level?
Yeah, I'm also taking maths and further maths.
Right, okay. So what skills does mathematics give you that's relevant to philosophy?
Well, I would say probably problem solving skills. To look at something in more than one way. Obviously it's a little bit difficult to relate them, but I would say that's how I would approach it. Absolutely. I know you think it's difficult, but actually you started doing it, and you can think also about problem solving and what skills that relies on. That relies on logic. Where does logic stem from? Well, it stems from creative thinking and critically thinking from multiple perspectives. Everything that you're being taught as part of your Oxbridge mentoring journey. Yeah, so you are doing it. You're living and breathing it now. So make those creative connections. Let's go to somebody else. So who's not had a chance? Iman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. What's your what would you bring out here? Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I do English, psychology and sociology, and I feel like that combination allows me to kind of it allows me to be analytical and think about stuff that I've never thought of, and I feel like they really work together because I've never thought of it in by itself if I didn't study those subjects.
And what are you going off to study? What are hoping to?
Oh, sorry, I'm going to study law at university.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect combination, and you need to articulate the links there. Okay, so all of you get this. So let's move on to some of the paragraphs here. So let's talk about, can I have somebody to read this out? So let's have a look. We've got Daniel, are you there? Can you read out the classics candidates paragraph, please?
Hello, yeah, sure.
Thank you.
My study of history has shown me the importance of closely assessing the reliability of sources and adopting a questioning approach. This approach enriched my understanding of Annals III in Latin, where underneath his veneer of objectivity, Tacitus criticizes imperial collusion against Germanicus. Having been intrigued by Tacitus's portrayal of Tiberius, I explored another early Roman emperor with my Latin EPQ on the extent to which Augustus was represented as a god during his lifetime. I found this opportunity for independent research enjoyable and was surprised to discover the existence of an imperial cult in Egypt, where a temple I had previously seen at Calabsha depicted Augustus as a deity. I am eagerly anticipating a trip to Greece especially the opportunity to visit Delphi, the center of not only the ancient world, but also my Greek research project this summer. It seems to me that Delphi's imports extended beyond oracular consultations by serving as a unifying factor amongst rival city-states.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Well read. Just out of curiosity, what subject are you hoping to study?
I personally want to do engineering at Cambridge,
Okay.
and I'm taking further maths, physics, and econ.
Great. Well, given where you're heading, that's well read in terms of classics terminology. And what would you say about this candidate? And has he subscribed to the paragraph structure or question for number 2?
I think their statement is interesting, but I think they talked a bit too much in detail about obviously what they were talking about in the paragraph. So I think they should maybe cut down just a little bit to leave space for the other things as well. Other than that, it does show they've got in-depth knowledge of their subject, definitely.
Yeah, so we know that he studies, or he or she studies history, and that they also study Latin. I'd be interested to know what the 3rd or 4th A level is and what they could have made of that. But actually, you can really feel that this person's really passionate about their subject, can't you? By the detail that they put in quite a short, concise way, which I know would have taken rework and revision, but they've done it. So who's doing maths here? Put your hands up on electronically. Daniel, you could have read this one. No, but you're not. Eleanor, why don't you read this one?
Hi. In my A-level studies, I have learned how to derive equations based on Newton's laws of motion, and have also explored my subject beyond the classroom by studying the MIT open course module on oscillations and mechanics, where it was astounding to see all the beautiful wave patterns formed by sand on black paper moving below an oscillating box, and how these change depending on the frequency of the motion. I also find the link to circular motion fascinating, whereby an orbiting object seen edge-on appears as an oscillation in one dimension. This makes me wonder what the world might look like if we could view ourselves in a space of higher dimension.
Very good. What do you think of this as a paragraph?
I thought it was quite difficult to read it because the first sentence is very long. There's a lot of clauses. The spelling and grammar, well, the grammar, like Newton's laws, there should be an apostrophe in there. I think it's a bit wordy and the sentence structure isn't brilliant, but I think the content that they're trying to get across is valuable in a personal statement. I just think the presentation isn't that great.
It was great. Well done. So Eleanor, you can spot these in other people's. Hopefully you can spot these in yours. That's the idea. So yes. I mean, he or she went on to talk about exploring their subject beyond the classroom, when actually studying the MIT open course shows that they have. Yeah, so a point of concision there, and everything that you say as well, in terms of spelling errors that Claire pointed out. Right, let's move on. Back to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Joyce. So yes, paragraph 3. This is where we get into some real depth into our subject, and we look at what particular areas of our subject we find most interesting and why. And we want to use this section to really demonstrate, firstly, that we actually understand what our subject involves at a university level. You know, something like history that I studied can seem to be very much about dates and events and to a certain extent interpretations at A level. At university, I spent a lot more time looking at concepts like class or race and how that has been used in historical interpretation. So it's a chance for you to demonstrate that you know what it means to study that subject at that level, and that you are actually really motivated by that. So I want you to think about your favourite topic or ideas that you've encountered in your study of that subject. And I don't mean I really enjoyed module 4 that we sat in year 12 because it was really I did well at it, I mean specifically what ideas or concepts. So we'll have some people that are interested in economics in the room, I'm sure. So perhaps it would be that you're particularly particularly interested in behavioural economics, how people's circumstances and psychology affects their choices that they make, and then how that affects the economy. In history, in fact, can someone put their hand up if we've got any people who are interested in history or politics or anything around that, please? I'd love to know. Okay, so we've got Tuesday. I've already been to Tuesday. Have we got anyone else for history or politics today? Not a problem. I'm going to come to you again then, Tuesday. Could you tell me a concept in history that you're particularly interested in, or a type of history?
Yeah, so for me, I really enjoy civilization and how basically the West sort of attempts to control and subjugate the East, the Orient, through making them seem inferior and imposing ideas of liberalism, democracy, and making them states who aren't like Western states inferior. So, for example, if we look at the dichotomy between, I don't know, liberalism and communism, you see how Americans deplore on the Russians just because communism is seen as communism's not very good, but in general it's quite they frown upon it. And similarly with the Islamic world, and the tensions between how Western civilization frames Islamic world as barbaric and just not up to date with what the customary conventions of society, how society should work. And then you can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tuesday. That, I mean, clearly you are able to answer straight away. You're interested in that concept of sort of the over Westernization of history and politics, and how people see the world. You immediately said, for example, and then gave me an example. That's sort of what you've just said there. If you could make it really concise with really specific examples, that's the sort of thing we're talking about in this paragraph. Okay, so also in history, you could say you might be particularly interested in social history, the history of ordinary people rather than of kings and monarchs and politics, and you might sort of express that in this paragraph as well. Perfect, thank you. And I presume, Chuzia, that you've probably read or watched or listened to stuff around that whole topic area because you speak so eloquently about it. So tell me about that in this paragraph. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of examples, please, Joyce, on this. So yeah, our first one is really, really interesting. So I'd like someone just to read out a portion of this. So could I get someone, I'm going to go for Abigail, please, if you're able to unmute. Could you read me from This Steered Me to Attend Lectures, please?
Yeah, so this steered me to attend lectures at the Royal Institute, ranging from the quantum theory of space-time by Professor C. Isham to the search of life beyond Earth by Dr. L. Dartnell. I found their insights so valuable that I later corresponded with Dr. Dartnell and arranged for him to present at my school. Nottingham and Exeter universities offered an opportunity to experience physics and engineering at a higher level, exposing me to a diverse array of workshops and lectures covering topics such as nanotechnology, rocket flight, and laser electron coolers.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Abigail. And stay off mute. Can I ask you, do you get the impression that this person likes physics, first of all? Are they committed and enthusiastic about physics?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. That is very clear from this, and there's some very concrete, specific examples. But Abigail, is there anything you would change or add about this, or anything you think you'd improve on?
Maybe I'd probably say saying like experience physics and engineering at a higher level, maybe like kind of go a bit more in depth about that and how it kind of impacted them. So obviously they say as well, like, you know, a diverse array of the workshops, but it's like, what did they find interesting about it? They say about nanotechnology, would this be something they'd want to maybe go into or like study as well?
Absolutely. I think that's a really good analysis of it. And it's very similar to how I feel about this paragraph. So where they say, the bit where it says, I found their insights so valuable, I'm screaming, you know, having seen many of these in admissions office, I'm screaming, which insights and why were they so valuable? Just give me one of those insights that knock your socks off and tell me why that's valuable. Don't just tell me it's valuable. Okay, it's great that you've invited them, you've shown your initiative, you've invited them to do extra talks, but in this paragraph it'd be even better if you could say, you know, their insights such as I'm not a physicist myself, but specific insight that they might have said in those talks, and then why, how does that relate to the world, or why is it so valuable? So yeah, I think that first one is great in some ways, but it's beginning to read a little bit like a list. You know, listing that nanotechnology, rocket flight, laser, electron. I'd have liked him to explored those concepts a little bit more. Okay, we're not actually going to look at the medicine one together today. We're going to run out of time, I think, if we do that. But just I will point out is that this one does go into more depth about those concepts. So when it talks about neuroscience as a concept and the complexity of the brain, they actually go into a bit of detail about that complexity of the brain, which is what we want to see, really. So yeah, paragraph 3, you're getting deep into your subject. That paragraph should actually read most like, you know, if you do essay subjects or you do written work for your various subjects, this paragraph should be as high quality as something you would write in a history essay, okay, or an economics essay. It's actually you know, we want you to really dive into that subject in this paragraph and demonstrate it. So yeah. It should be clear by the end of paragraph 3 that you really love the subject areas that you're applying for.
Thanks, Claire. As Claire said, it's all to do with demonstrating that you're passionate about your subject, and sometimes less is more. You know, to dig a little deeper, and quite right about avoiding, you know, sounding as though you're listing off things that you've read. It's not about that. Right, paragraph 4. Paragraph 4 is how have you developed your subject interest beyond work set in class? So beyond homework, beyond the, you know, the school walls, what have you done? So I do want to leave time to answer questions. So what we're looking for here are things like attendance at public lectures. Hopefully all of you have been keeping your learning logs up to date, because those are reflecting on the 5 observations or learning points are really useful for writing your personal statement. That's the whole point of the learning log. So you can look back, review, and think, oh, that's a good example. I'll put it in here. Listening to TV and radio documentaries, visits to cultural institutions that relate to your subject, you know, obviously wider reading. Now, the wider reading based around your own interests, but also there are subject reading lists that are available on the Oxford and Cambridge websites as well, under the subjects. And yes, most importantly, what did you learn from these experiences? So this paragraph is to do with your subject related extracurricular. Okay. And I think a lot of this is I think I'd like to read the law candidate one. So put your hands up if you're doing law, aiming for law. Who's that? Put your hands up. Oh, great, we got Malik. Would you? Oh, sorry, Iman. Is that part of the same person? Yes. Well, let's go to you. Would you like to read law candidates very quickly?
Yes. To gain an insight of the law work, I undertook 1 week placement in a corporate law firm and the Crown Prosecution Service. As part of my work experience, I visited Wood Green Crown Court, where I observed cases in progress and gained a better understanding of our criminal court procedures. I also enjoyed shadowing Francis Gibb, the legal editor of the Times newspaper. Whilst following Mrs. Gibb, I had the pleasure of attending a press conference in the Department of Constitutional Affairs regarding the reform of the covenant system, enabling me to see the inseparable nature of law and government policy.
Thank you very much. Well read. I think what we're trying to say here is actually that this person has gone over and above, you know, have explore their subject, haven't they? And they seem very proactive in how they've gone about it, and almost strategic in a way. So, you know, Crown Prosecution Service, Department of Constitutional Affairs, shadowing Francis Gibb. It's all kind of showing and demonstrating their aptitude and interest in following the law, studying it. Okay, let's move on to paragraph 5.
Joyce, can I just ask you one quick question there? Because I know people often worry about this, the work experience element of it. And I guess just to point out that the work experience is just one example of academic extracurriculars, and it's more relevant and important for some subjects than others. So it doesn't have to be work experience that you talk about in that area. For things like law, medicine, vet science, etc., it's an obvious thing that you can do. For history, it's much harder, for example, to get relevant work experience, and you can talk about other academic extracurriculars. Like the other example that was on there was about someone going for computer science, and they actually developed an app sort of on a summer course. Okay, it doesn't have to be work experience. However, if you do have relevant work experience, this would be where you would talk about it. I guess I just want to say that because people worry about work experience quite a lot.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, a lot of you will have had achievements right, left and centre all the way through your schooling. So how on earth do you choose? You choose the ones that have the strongest link to your university subject first and foremost. That's what we recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So I'm now going to go to paragraph 5. Now, this is the penultimate paragraph, and actually should be one of the shortest in your personal statements. And it can be hard because this is where we start talking a little bit about extracurriculars that are perhaps a little bit broader than your subject in question. And it is the very first time in this paragraph, in personal statement, that we want to see anything that's even remotely not directly to do with the subject that you've chosen. And actually, the best personal statements, if you are able to, you can even link these to your subject. Okay, there's some clever and creative ways that you can explain how your slightly broader hobbies, extracurricular and achievements still make you a good student of that subject, or at the very least, a good university student with the transferable skills able to do well. Okay, you must not just list everything that you do. We know you do loads of really cool stuff. Don't just put them in a list. I want you to look for adjectives that really describe those skills that you are developing. So we've put on the screen there some suggestions of the type of skills and sort of qualities that these things might have brought out in you. If they're true for you, then find ways to include those. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of examples, including one that has quite cleverly able to link it through to their subject. We're not actually going to waste too much time on the first example here, other than to point out it's a bit of a poor example actually, because, well, look at it. It reads like a list. Okay. So it's particularly the last sentence. Let's look at that. I'm also a member of a swimming club and have completed my Bronze Duke of Edinburgh award. Okay. Just listing them doesn't give us much information at all. Many other people will have been in a swimming club and done their DV. So something like DV, they could have done a lot more with that. They could have explained how it built transferable skills. The second one is a lot more interesting. So this is a PPE candidate. And they actually say, besides academic interests, they represented Great Britain as a member of the under-17, under-20 fencing squad, so really high sporting achievement. But what's really interesting here is they then segue into, this brought me into contact with different cultures and made me think about the political advantages for countries to strive for sporting successes, particularly the ex-Soviet nations, which produce an especially high standard of fencer. So they actually link it, because they're doing politics, philosophy and economics, back to the sort of politics and history of the ex-communist world and how that impacts on things such as sport today. Okay, I did something similar personally. So I was in a youth orchestra, I played the violin, which allowed me to travel across various countries on tour. And I actually said in that, it allowed me to visit many European countries, including, for example, Estonia last year. And I said, and this gave me an insight into the history and culture of sort of an Eastern European country. And actually, I remember very clearly, this was pulled out in my interview as a spark to start talking about countries that had been under communism and whether or not they were able to develop a sense of national identity and nationalism. And actually that sparked a conversation in my interview. And that come from me playing the viola in a youth orchestra. Okay, so if you can link that through to your subject, fantastic. Okay, everything needs to sort of be showing why you are a good student in general, or will be a good student in general, but more specifically of the subject that you are choosing. Okay, so perhaps this one has gone, a little bit too much into the details of that fencing, but it's actually quite clever. And if you can do that for yours, give it a go. Okay.
Great. Claire, thank you so much. As a general rule for all of you, if a particular sentence doesn't reveal a bit of your personality, it doesn't go in. If it's saying nothing about you and describing what you've done only, then it doesn't go in. So each and every single sentence has to count. Right. You can read the do's. I think it's really important to go through the don'ts at this stage. And we've been hinting at these in various forms. So let's just go through them now. Don't just describe your subject in the first sentence. A lot of first drafts do that. Explain why you want to study it. Another thing that students do is they try and educate an intelligent audience. So remember who's reading your personal statement, and avoid patronizing and not having to kind of fully explain yourself. I think you should assume that they understand the concepts that you talk about. Never use slang, cliches or quotes. Don't choose fancy words without real need for them. So yes, use subject terminology, but not over sophisticated waffle. Is that how you actually speak in real life? I think the mark of a good essay is if it rolls off the tongue. If when you read it, it rolls off the tongue. So read it back to yourself. Are you being too long-winded in some places? Does it need a full stop? Don't use we. They want to focus on your, on what you've done. Even though there's ways of explaining that you were part of a team, all right, but actually it is you and your contribution as part of that team. Don't lie about anything or pretend you've done it or you've done something, because you will be caught out. So as a general rule, if you plan to read something, leave it out of your personal statement until you've done it, because you're so busy with your studies that you might not get around to doing it, and then you might be asked about it at admissions interview. Career plans. Don't mention career plans which don't have any direct bearing on your studies. I think that the type of universities you're aiming for, first and foremost, you want to come across, and it may not be the case, that this is a stepping stone to bigger, better things and a job. We get it, but actually they want students who love their subject and learning for its own sake rather than as a means to an end, and that's really important. Don't use don't use a list. Lists sound arrogant and are boring to read. So that's what Claire was going on about in some of the paragraphs. It's, you know, because the students are so desperate to fit everything in, all their achievements, they end up listing them, and they come across as quite wooden, because, you know, they leave things out, leave words out such as I'm keen, I'm, you know, when you write like that, it gives the depth of personality that makes it interesting to read. Right, so don't use long, winding, passive sentences. Use active voice and directness. I think that this is something which is a particular skill. I really feel for you, because, you know, as a 17-year-old, no one has really taught you how to write in plain English. It's a difficult skill that, you know, you only pick up after university, you know. So, and it's not, we're not asking you to write in the tone of an essay. We're asking you to write plain, simple English. That's difficult to achieve, but more on that next time. And generally, if your UCAS personal statement starts with an I, we bat it back to you. Start in a more interesting way. Okay. Right, just to kind of wrap up here. Right, there are 3 things that we want you to keep in mind. And you need to constantly reflect and constantly think whether you're showing these 3 factors. The first is the motivational factor. Are you, in the way that you presented yourself, showing that you are motivated about your subject? Okay. Does it have the likability factor? That's the thing that Claire was talking about. You know, avoid listing, and talk about how you enjoy, you know, your subject and what you find curious about it and interesting. And does it have that X factor? What have you done above and beyond that is going to mark you out from the crowd in a good way? Okay. If you don't feel that these factors are present enough, I think you need to revise your UCAS personal statement until it does. And it's a particular skill to have. It's the hardest thing to review and correct your own work, but we all have to do it at university, so it starts here. And here it is, Claire, is that right? The final bullet point on here?
Yes, unfortunately so. I mean, maybe more than 1 minute, but admissions officers and admissions tutors are receiving hundreds and sometimes thousands of these, and they do not spend very long on each one. You need to stand out.
Okay, there you go. Right, so it's come to the point now where we've run out of time. However, if there are burning questions, best ask them now before we end the conversation. I'm keen that you do. So I think the best thing to do here, I can't actually see the chat, but I think Claire can.
Yeah, I can.
So we'll give you a few seconds, really.
Yeah, get any burning questions in now. There will be a future webinar, Joyce, won't there, where we'll continue to talk about personal statements.
Yeah.
And we'll go into a bit more depth in the future. But any burning questions, please get them into the chat now, or shout out and unmute yourself.
Has any come through, Claire?
No, not just yet. I guess just to say that clearly everyone who's contributed in the chat and doing this today, you've clearly given it some really good thought, which is fantastic. You know, keep up with that. Looking at the booklet that accompanies this, that has some of these prompt questions and space for you to write about. Right, we do have a question. If we have very few extracurricular activities, I'm kind of boring. I'm sure you're not boring, Lily. Should we leave out the paragraph or try really hard to think of things? Good question. Joyce, what would you say? Someone with no extracurricular activities, what should they be doing?
Well, you've got the summer vacation coming up. So I think that you should use your mentoring sessions to ask what sort of things that you could be doing. But actually, You could be proactive and think about all the things that you know about that would show that you're being proactive. And it should be things that you enjoy. Don't do something because it's going to look good in your personal statement. Do it because it's something that you'll enjoy, that you'll know you'll get something out of as well. That's the extra bonus. That's what I'd say. Absolutely.
And when you say very few extracurricular, you don't need to have lots. You do need to have something that really, that I'm sure you do something, when you get back from school that you can talk about in this. We've got a couple more questions, Joyce. Someone invests a lot of time into music, plays 4 instruments, orchestra, jazz band, choir, which is fantastic, but how can she really emphasize this commitment? Okay, I mean, you don't want to sort of list it in the way that you just have, perhaps, but you do want to say that music is a huge passion of yours, demonstrated through multiple instruments and choir, and then why that commitment to music sort of makes you sort of, I don't know, skilled. Does it mean that you have to manage your time really carefully to also be a fantastic academic?
I think that Claire, you might, I think if you think about Claire's example and how she's presented herself with being part of the youth band. Actually, I was back in the day as well, so there's a bit of a running theme going on with the history students. So I think that you can concisely sum this up. So I have enjoyed playing XY musical instrument up to grade 7, 8. This has taught me to become an expert in time management, because it features so much in my life. Yet I've ensured that I've kept up with my work, etc., and also how it's led you on to other things, and appreciate maybe the how music is a commentary on history itself, isn't it? The time and place of when a musical piece has been created is highly significant, I think. I mean, what are you going on to study, just out of curiosity there?
Yes, so if Abigail pops on the chat what she's going on to study, that would be interesting. We've got a few more questions of Wisden now, actually, as well.
Great. Well, Claire, take the next one.
Yeah, so the next one I'm going to answer very quickly. Luciana says, do you have to do the organisers of our extracurricular activities have to confirm that we've attended? No, there's no mechanism for them to have to confirm. All I say is speak the truth, because they'll know, especially if you get called to interview and you're asked about it, they will know. So just be truthful. What should you do? I've had 2 similar questions about people being worried about being questioned or asked about things that they've read. What if they don't remember all of it? What if they've asked a specific thing about that book that they don't remember? In the interview, they won't ask you a very, very specific question based on, or they're very unlikely to ask you a very specific question based on something you've said you've read. They will base it on, what you're saying in your personal statement. They're not going to try and trick you and catch you out, okay? If you don't remember every single bit of it, that's not a problem, but you do need to have read it and be able to talk about the key arguments of it. So just never, ever lie about something you've read, because they can ask you. They did ask me in my personal statements. So don't worry if you've forgotten the details, but you do need to have the general gist.
There's 2 things I would add to there, Claire, and that is we ask you to keep your learning logs up to date for a reason. And the students that do, I mean, I know it's maybe an additional chore, but the students who do it invariably get in, and there's a reason for that, because you're reflecting. We're getting you to reflect all the time on what you've learned, your observations, and so these are the small points that you would actually include in your personal statement. And there was also something I was going to include in that. What was the question again?
About I think so. The question is about if you questioned on specific things that you've read.
Okay. Don't worry, because we're going to be getting you to predict all the possible questions that could come up in your personal statements in the run-up to admissions interviews. So that's another thing. So those two things.
And I would just add on that, you know, please, you know, anything. So if you're going to sit there in your personal statement and write like I did, that I was particularly interested in Irish history because of my family history, I knew that there was a very real chance that they're going to start and ask me about Irish history. If I was not interested in Irish history or not comfortable talking about it, I wouldn't have mentioned it in my personal statement. Okay, yeah. Doesn't mean I needed to know all the ins and outs of Irish history, but I needed to have something intelligent to say about it when asked. So you can sort of use this personal statement to really push forward certain topics that you would be comfortable talking about. And don't set yourself up for failure by mentioning things that you're A, not interested in, or B, aren't able to say something worthwhile about. It's about honesty, guys. So, you know, if you haven't read it, you're not putting it in your personal statement. Really would advise that.
Great.
Make your life too difficult.
Don't worry about it. It'll all work out. Keep your learning logs up to date. Expect a question that's opinion-based regarding what you've said. And as I say, yeah, it'll all work out, and you will be predicting questions on your own paragraphs anyway, so you'll be more than prepared.
Absolutely. So I think that answers all our questions. So Abigail,
oh, really?
Abigail, the musician, the wonderful musician, is going to do aerospace engineering. Well, I'm sure you could work out what some of the links are. I don't know what instruments you play, but I'm sure there's stuff about acoustics and the physics of music that you can make a nice link there.
Definitely. Yeah. Fantastic. Great. Well, I think that what we have here. So if you wanted to, and we're not going to go into these, but if you wanted to just do a print screen on this, and kind of think as a way of summing up the session, but really you've got your 6 paragraphs now. Let's stop the screen share. Personally, the students who write out the question headings for the 6 paragraphs invariably write better first drafts, and there's a reason for that, because the questions are there to keep you focused. So do that, and you know, when the time comes when you have to remove them, that's fine, but so long as you're constantly focused on answering the paragraph questions, you should be okay. Anyway, it has been delightful to work with you today. All of you have engaged really well. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Thank you so much to Claire for sharing her experience and advice. You are all free to go. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. Welcome.